So good afternoon or good evening. This is Monday, October the 12th, 2020. This is the Policy Review Committee. I'm going to ask all who is in attendance to please state their name. I'm Bucky Scott.
Kirsten Thompson.
Greg Cooper.
Ashley Guthrie.
Rob Hurley.
Okay. So, Rob, I'm going to lean on you a little bit here, as I normally do. I think our first policy we wanted to discuss is, if I'm correct, here is the policy manual. Is that's the order I got. Okay, go ahead.
The first one we want to discuss is Title I Parent and Family Engagements. Can I give some information just for the other board members just so they...
Yeah, of course.
This is actually an easy one. We're required to review this under federal guidelines. It's pretty straightforward and it's by the regs. Just for those of you that are new to the school board, Title I we received is a federal grant. I write the Title I grant for about this grant is for about $380,000, and we basically through our Title I program we pay for 3 teachers, remedial services for reading and math. We also have to provide those services to our local private school or where our kids go. Primarily it's Immaculate Conception. We also service 3 other private schools. We're required by law to get this money. We have to also service them with those services. As part of that policy 918, and basically this is bureaucratic, just needs to take a look at the policy. It's all the stuff in here is required by law and it's looked at every year by the federal government. It's basically saying Title I is highly regulated, and it talks about the parent and family engagement. Basically talks about what we have to have parent meetings, we have to interact with the parents, we have to have parent conferences, those types of things. That's what the policy entails. I'm not recommending any changes to the policy because it's all tied to the grant itself. We just basically have to have it on our agenda once a year and just to make sure it's up to date. And so that's why it's on here. Obviously, last day COVID hit, and so it's a different ballgame, and that's why it's on here right now.
Thank you, Rob. Rob, what do I need to mark on here? Just that it was first read, or?
That doesn't need to go to a reading. It just needs mark reviewed on it and today's date.
Got it. All right. I don't get to do this, but Tanya Bell just joined us. Thank you. All right, Rob, the big one of the day is...
Okay, the next policy, and we have to, and I'll talk about this quite extensively, has to do with policy 707, use of school facilities. This is all under board docs, by the way, for those of you who are new to board docs. The policies are all in there under, and the committee can explain to you that. Okay, here is an issue that is coming and it's going to be coming fast. That's why I put it on this month's agenda. It has to do with COVID and the use of our school facilities by outside groups. Here's where we are at. Currently, let me kind of explain what the current district policy is in regards to that. Basically, an outside group, if they want to use our facilities, for example, the gym, the auditorium, the wrestling room, they get categories, either category 1, category 2, or category 3. Category 1 organizations, and we classify the organizations when they make application, are local groups. This is like Amity AC, Laser Mat Club, groups along that. There's a cheerleading group we give facilities to. There's a lot of Category 1 facility usage. We do not charge for Category 1 groups to use our facilities. Outdoor with COVID, it's not a big deal right now. It's been real easy for us. Indoor is going to be a little tricky, which we'll talk about in a moment. Category 2 groups are basically nonprofit groups, governmental groups, community civic groups, things along that type of thing. And Category 3 is groups that are commercial groups that are outside of the Daniel Boone Area School District, and they would be like, for example, groups will rent our facilities for tournaments, groups will rent our facilities, for-profit groups will rent our facilities to, in our auditoriums for dance recitals, things along those lines. Those are some examples. This policy works great non-COVID for us. Works very good for our community also. However, what we need to decide here tonight, and I think we need to make some modifications to this policy in light of COVID. First, we have to decide whether we want to allow Category 3 and Category 2 groups in our facilities at all. And then we're going to talk about Category 1, which is our local groups. And I guess the first point of discussion maybe tonight, and I have my thoughts, and I'll certainly share them, but I think you guys should probably share it, is outside for-profit groups during this COVID crisis, do we want to amend this policy to allow people to rent our facilities for money that have nothing to do with our school district or groups or any type of affiliation?
I would say no, but that's just me, especially under these circumstances.
My recommendation to superintendent would be no. Because of what we're doing as far as our health and safety of our students and our staff and our community, we're trying to do as much mitigation as possible, and I think this would just add another layer of a challenge for us. So I would not.
It's just not worth the money. I mean, it's got to be safety first for the kids. Right. It's. I mean, I think eventually, the policy could go back the other way, but especially under these circumstances. So
I would agree 100%. Category 3, we have no use. I mean, the money's nice, but it doesn't matter. It creates more headaches and potentially more costs, indirect costs associated with that.
Sure.
So I would agree with that. Category 2 is a little bit more tricky. And let me go over what Category 2 is again. It's nonprofit groups, governmental groups, community, civic, recreational, and service groups within the bounds of the Daniel Boone Area School District when admission is charged or fundraising activities are conducted for profit. That's what the definition of that is.
Examples. What would that be before I say no?
I would, let's say, it would be an example would be, okay, a mom's group in Douglasville wanted to rent a classroom for something. That might be an example of Category 2. It might be a political candidate wanting to rent our auditorium for some sort of rally. Those are things that have happened in the past that fall under Category 2. Again, I have to know that those aren't big issues, but they get a little more problematic there. Category 1 primarily deals with the sports groups that we'll talk about. We'll get to that in a second. Thoughts about Category 2. I'm kind of on the same note that I think Dr. Cooper is too with the Category 2. I think we should probably skip that, guys. And those are fees, and the reason why we charge fees is because they're making money on them. That's kind of I think if we run across one that, I'll bring it to your attention as a board, like, hey, maybe we should bring this group, not allow this group because we didn't think of it, because it does say civic. But that's kind of my thought process. I don't know where the board is. I'm like, careful, you guys.
I don't sit on this committee, but does Category 2 also include all the fundraisers for Relay for Life that occur?
That would be school affiliated, so I would think the Relay for Life is primarily run by our school, so I think we would be okay on that. I think we pretty much stuck, for the most part, we stuck with Category 1 with that. I think there's been a couple exceptions to that. That would be, for example, if we needed to do something and we felt like Relay for Life, that particular group fell into category 2, I think I'd try to bring that to the board of directors and say, hey, like, this is what we need to improve, and we should see that on an isolated basis.
I mean,
Exception to policy.
I can't hear you, Brett. What?
It would be a special exception to the policy, as the board would have the right to waive that part of the policy. I mean, our recommendation would be the same as
3?
category 3. Do not entertain during COVID-19.
I agree. As long as we're told that there's an exception, that makes sense.
Yeah, and like an example of like, I'm trying to think historically, just because I've been here a while, an example where I think they have been charged is when they wanted to use a cafeteria and run a dance with 500 people in there, where there's extensions of, things that the school district has to do. That would be an example where Relay for Life might get hit with a fee. But generally, we try to support groups that are supporting our students and supporting good causes. So for category 2, Bucky,
I agree. I think you all could speak, but I mean, everyone's shaking their head no, so I think we all agree about category 2 also. Again, this is just an exception because of what we're going through. This is not a reflection on anything. I know we could potentially get some heat on some of this, but it's got to be safety for the kids first.
We can't have outside individuals
Right.
coming into the building and
Nope.
then possibly transmitting it. And then it's gonna still, again, increase cleaning costs.
Well, that's it, and a discussion was said before about. I mean, there is, and it's coming up on the next group, but it's just that concern: are these people cleaning the building right? Or how are they handling things? When they're here at the building. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have an extensive. And again, I think it just comes. You could say it just comes down to safety.
It becomes a challenge as far as the accountability aspect of it. And managing that,
Better.
monitoring it, and that becomes a challenge.
Agree.
Okay, so category
This is-
2, we decided we're no, okay on that. And then going to category 1, this is a sticky wicket in a lot of ways here, guys. What we're dealing with in category 1 is primarily, we get a lot of heavy usage in the winter time from Amity AC basketball, using our gymnasiums, and the Glazer Mat Club. These groups are primarily, almost exclusively Daniel Boone students. I think there are a different situation here when we take a look at that. I have some ideas here, but I'd like to hear your thought processes first. These are our community, I suspect that I am not speaking for these organizations, but I suspect they would be in jeopardy knowing the usage of Amity AC basketball. I would suspect they would be able to run their program this winter if we shut them off completely from it. I don't know where you guys are at in regards to that. I have to give some suggestions, but I'd like to hear from you guys first.
I would like to say that these are like the sports programs that lead to our high school programs, and they are mostly our students, so I feel differently than I felt about the other things, but maybe Dr. Cooper has a recommendation.
Yeah, I would, with the parameters, I think it's important that it's similar to what's in our activities health and safety plan. The caveat that's a little bit challenging again is as we let the whole goal is for our students to be able to participate. These are our feeder programs for later on, and as kids particularly through our system from an extracurricular standpoint. So I think it's important for our kids to get on a playing surface. I'm not sure how we can manage or advocate for parents to also be in the facility at the same time, because then that bumps the numbers up and then increases the risk of transmission. So, some type of a compromise where our students are allowed to participate and be in the facility of the gymnasiums, however the parents should not be coming in and out, just pick up, drop off sort of thing, and the coaches of the kids would be
Or maybe they can come up with a drop-off system. You know, parents can come in. But I think we should work within a health and safety plan. I don't think we should just like open the door and let everybody's parents come in. I mean, I understand the games, my son plays basketball. But I don't think we should have outside people.
Along those lines, if I can add some information here, my opinion, which I'll share here, is that we should allow the category 1, which are our local, because our kids almost complete. I really believe that. I would put the caveat in of this to consider, okay, guys, as a group. The high school facility, hear my logic here, the high school facility and the middle school gyms are used. Now, we have other gyms, and all our elementaries have gyms, as well as over at River Rock, that's our gym also. So we have other facilities we can use. I would think, at least consider taking, now the high school gym is not used as often as your middle school gym, but they are used on occasion. I would consider pulling them from usage because when they get a COVID case, because it's likely we have large groups of people who eventually have that happen, unfortunately. When it happens, that gym would now need to be shut down for 24 hours and defogged and things like that. That would affect our interscholastic sports program. Where it really hits is the middle school is used constantly on the weekends by the basketball program, so that would be, their scheduling would get a lot harder. Recognize that, but not insurmountable. We have other gyms. I believe that the Laser Mat Club, they have to move their mats. They're going to have to move because they wouldn't be using our high school facility up here. They would have to move their stuff down to one of the elementary schools, I believe. And there's not representatives of their group here, their groups here, obviously, and nor do I want to manage their sports for them. But it would create some inconveniences for them, but I think they still got places to play. Something I'd like the board to consider. We'll do whatever the board wants, but that would kind of be my recommendation because I don't want to have a high school basketball game canceled on Wednesday night because on Tuesday night there was a basketball game going on there between two youth groups, and then we ended up canceling that. The board also should know there's a little bit of risk, which I think it's worth doing in that if they get a case in one of the elementary schools, it could affect phys ed the next day, so we have to shut the gym down. But I think the value in physical education for our kids being active in the community outweighs, you know what I mean, the risk of we have one day of not having a phys ed class. There are other things that can be done in that class, not ideal, but you're not using that facility for that one day.
I understand it would logistically be harder than that, but is it possible to say that try to keep the teams from those buildings at their buildings? So like my son, played in 5th grade last year. Could we say that basketball, like we only want 3rd through 5th grade in that gym, because that's normally who's in that gym. We don't want to bring a bunch of kids from another level into that building that aren't normally there. I mean, is that too difficult? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question because, like, the basketball people aren't,
I would say, okay, it's appropriate for the primary center that they practice at the primary center.
No, I'm just throwing it. I think that's not a bad idea, but I think we also have to be, or at least think about the fathers or the coaches that are there who just came in from Italy that week from work, and I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. I'm not against this idea. But I get what you're saying.
I just think that the grade levels that attend that school practice should still be at that school, understanding that it may limit the number of practices they have, but I just don't think we should start switching buildings.
It's not a bad idea.
Are we leaving the high school and the middle school out in full in that because of the
That's
potential
correct.
impact of our interscholastic athletics.
That's
I
the
would agree with
recommendation.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
I agree with that,
I
yes.
agree with that.
Not use middle school?
I use the middle school and high school, but we will use all of our other,
Oh, yeah, right. You agree with that?
Well, don't some of the math club and the basketball use our middle school students?
probably, I would say.
Those up to sixth
If,
grade.
if that is the case, could those students perhaps use the River Rock or the old Amity Elementary building where the disc offices used to be?
What do you mean, what do you say?
I said, if that's the case and we have that grade level of students who would typically use the middle school, could they use the old Amity Elementary Center? Because I see what Ms. Bell is saying with keeping the kids in their like environment, but if the middle school's off limit, that's moving to a school where most of the hurt students are not at.
Well, yeah, I agree. I've seen the River Rock gym that's a nice facility. Yeah, that could be certainly, I think,
I just don't think we should have them moving all around, because then when we have an exposure, we've had X amount of people now, and now it's in more than one of our schools.
Yeah, but that could be written into the policy, correct, Mr. Hurley?
We could write that in there. Should we put to the extent feasible in case they, I don't know how they do the age group. I know different sports, they do age groups differently. Some do it by grade level, some do it by birthday, and sometimes you get a kid who's real old or real young. You know, should we say to the extent feasible?
I would agree with that.
Like, I think fifth and sixth might play basketball together, so there would be something that would have to be an exception, because fifth graders are at the intermediate center, sixth graders are in middle school. That would be an exception.
And that language would cover that exception.
Okay. So, I think we agree, or I think what you're just saying there. Rob?
And just for clarity, so I understand this also, and Bucky can write this down, is the middle school off limits, or is it on limits for fifth and sixth grade, I guess is.
I don't have as hard of a time allowing fifth or sixth graders in middle school. I understand the risk with extracurricular activities in the high school that we don't think we should do. But I don't know, is there, I don't know.
But I think what we're saying, you're saying River Rock would kind of be like replacement for the middle school gym. That's what you're thinking, or you're saying?
That's what I would.
I mean, I find that acceptable. I mean, that would just be our. Now, I'm just going to throw something in there because I don't want to do this because we agreed we'd get out of here quickly on this. But what do we do with? I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but the coaches, like, you know, their parents, they've been traveling all week. Is there something that we do? Check their temperature when they come. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to be.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure.
I mean, I work at a club and I don't do that every day. So
We
I'm just,
can't, you know, it's going to be hard for us.
yeah, fair enough. I like I said, I work at a club and I don't do that to our members, so I'm good with that. So
I'm quite sure, and I think we should put this in there, that the club, as a clause in our policy, the club has to develop a health and safety plan. I don't think we want to be in the business of creating one that
Right.
we
Okay.
have to our own. The most governing bodies in youth sports require their members in order to resume participation to have something, and they give a lot of the clubs templates to work from. Can't speak for all sports, I only know certain sports, but I suspect that's true with basketball also. But requiring them to have a health and safety plan that they enforce, I think, should be a clause if we allow them into the buildings, which we do want to do. They need to do that. You also need to enforce it, and that's also important. To the issue of parents, are we allowing parents in as spectators to decide against that? Is that correct?
Dr. Cooper's not.
Yeah, I don't feel confident unless they're identified as a coach for that particular team or teams that are in there. And it's not, I'm just a coach tonight and I'm not a coach, you know, the next night. It's got to be a consistent coach. that's different, but I don't think it's advantageous for us as a district for that increased liability for transmission.
And those gyms are smaller.
Yeah, they are. They are small. You're right on top of the.
They are.
You're right on top of the kids.
We did take a snapshot of the capacity of those gyms, and they range from anywhere from 240 to 371. So, you know, if you're following the guidance that's set forth by the government, like guidance, you know, it's 20%, it's under 1,000. That's not a whole lot of room other than for your
No,
players.
I think that's fair. We're allowing the kids to participate. They're you know, maybe not the middle school, but they're going to be in River Rock or what have you, and I agree with that.
I agree.
And I agree with what Rob said, the health and safety plan, that their organization should come up with a plan. Now, do they present that to you, Rob, or us, or?
I prefer not to get into the business of evaluating stuff that's
So they just need to they need to create their own plan. That's it.
in accordance with the guidelines, you can phrase it.
Right.
The guidelines for a governing body. Every youth sports association has a governing body, so
Okay.
something like that, we can wordsmith that a little bit. Like,
Okay, that's fine. All right.
may I make another suggestion to the board? in regards
Sure.
to the thing I think should be in this policy? I believe we should have if a student or if a child gets COVID in an organization and they play basketball in third grader and he gets COVID, the gym will need to be filed. We can do it as a district, we can contract a service pro to do that, but we need to be able to charge them whatever it costs to do that. Are you guys okay with the clause like that? They gotta pay for it. If it's their group, they gotta pay for it.
But yeah,
I'll give you an example. Plus, it was like $150.
Sure.
One plus.
yeah, I think that's fair. And we'll just
Honestly, we have a machine for like we use for we have actually where we have
Right.
the case and we use that in the classroom. We have one internally also, but that's also expensive to us. So for the outside group, I would say use Service Pro like we do with the busing company and do it that way. That way the cost is fixed and we're not haggling over how much the fluid costs to have it done. Does that make sense, Paul?
it does. We're good.
And we're not going to bank it. It's not like crazy expensive or anything like that. It's default.
And if they ask, we'll just give them a range, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
I agree with that. I mean, I have those foggers at work, so I know it's actually relatively easy to do too. Rob,
Can I make another suggestion too? Is that
you're the one he wanted to wrap it.
The suggestion that I would have is, in our policy, I think we want to task the organization with a list of, they have to keep a list of who is there each night in there. The reason why, only because I'm knee deep in this when we're dealing with issues here, is the contact tracing piece. I think there's a civic responsibility. Now, most people don't have to deal with that kind of stuff, but they may not realize how important that becomes also
Sure.
when you have the case and understanding who is within 6 feet for 15 minutes. Otherwise, absent that information, more people are getting quarantined, and so that's really important. And you got to start with who's there. That's the bare minimum. So I think that's something that we should require. That's not overly burdensome for the group. Just we need to know every night who's there. And keep in mind that tests are instant. So when they go and, like, say a kid goes and gets tested on Tuesday, the results may not come back till Thursday. So they need to keep that so that you can go back to that particular data.
I'm good with that. Rob, does that conclude it?
Yeah, I think, let me just look through the notes. Make sure there's some attendees. I think from my perspective, does anyone else have anything else to add to that particular policy?
No.
Bucky, I recommend what we do, we can talk about this afterwards.
Yeah.
And I'll type this up and send it back out to you. I suggest what we do is we create like another number under, it's just a under COVID restrictions, you know, here, and we'll list all the things we talked about tonight under there. So, like, as the policy's written right now, there's like 18 points to it. We have 19. These items will be in effect during the COVID pandemic or until otherwise modified by the board. And then we list like the 6 or 7 modifications that we talked about this evening, like under that, like A, B, C, D, E. And I'll work with you, Bucky, on that, like how it works with that. Does that make sense? Is everyone agreeable with that?
Yeah, yes. All right, I think that concludes our Policy Review Committee meeting here on October 12th. Thank you.